Palmer and Maria Bello after this clip.
Mom? I just don't know what to do about it. I'm so sorry. I really don't.
Mom?
Hey, Martin, what's up?
You okay?
Yeah, I will be. Just gonna take a bit. Did we wake you?
What?
Hey. You gotta go back to bed, sweetie. Okay, the only ones that should be wandering the halls at this hour are grown-ups. Good night, Martin.
I started reading the script, and usually the only time I have to myself, because I'm a mama, is I put my son to bed and then I sit in bed and then I read a script. So this time I started reading the script. I was like, nope, I'm going to be doing that tomorrow in the daylight. So I stopped it in the morning, I started reading through, and I read through the entire thing, and I was just, it was so exciting to me because it's so refreshing in the genre to have a story that you really care about and a family that you can connect to. And I just loved how layered and complex they are, and then you chuck in this incredible supernatural element, and it just made such a fantastic script. And I was like, I'm going to do this movie.
I think if you take the horror aspect away from this film, it could be a standalone family drama. It is about mental illness in a family, how that separates people and the complication of that, and a mother who's played by me trying to do her best to connect and take care of her kids, and it's not possible for her to do so, especially when she's off her medication.
Teresa Palmer and Maria Bello talking about Lights Out.
Yes, so we are all in sort of, as a child, we were all sort of, inherently scared of the dark.
I think most children
Well,
are. For at least
some people
part
might
of
still
their life.
be. To this day, might still
I
be scared
slept
of the
for a
dark.
lot of years with the lights on.
Yeah, and what's the most simple premise that you could ever do to tap into people's fears? Make a film about the scared of the dark.
Yeah.
The fear of the dark. And that's what Lights Out essentially is, down to a T. It's the directorial debut of David F. Sandberg, as we heard in that clip. And basically, it's been produced by James Wan, who did the Conjuring films. And David F. Sandberg's going on to do the Annabelle sequel eventually as well. He's quite an open filmmaker, and some of his AMAs and Reddit have been really interesting where he's been talking about the filmmaking process and how he's managed to get this film financed.
He's already been corrupted into doing things in the system. Cool.
Yeah, but no, it sounds like he's got a lot of creative control over it, to be honest, because he admits the first one was pretty terrible and he's hoping to make this one. I haven't seen Annabelle. It's not really very good.
It's not supposed to be very good.
Not very good. So basically, in Lights Out, there's the young woman played by Teresa Palmer, and she is the daughter of Maria Bello's character, who is essentially quite sort of unstable in the mind. Maria Bello's character's son is Paul Martin, and he can't sleep very well at his house. So Teresa Palmer takes Martin to her house to sleep for a bit, and they soon discover that Maria Bello's character is being haunted by a supernatural presence by the name of Diana, and it turns out that she has a very dark and mysterious past around Maria Bello's character, and they have to sort of essentially save their mother from herself, I suppose.
Ooh.
So it's all herself and Diana, who's a wicked presence, a very bad presence. So Lights Out is it's sort of, by the fact that it goes on that primal fear of the scare of the dark, gives it sort of straight up props for me, essentially, because there are fears that everyone has had. Like there's a lot of fears that are sort of from the very beginning that everyone had, sort of fear of the dark, fear of the unknown, fear of water, fear of fire. There's sort of very primal fears that you get very to the edge of, and by mixing that with a story it has a lot of sort of psychological complexity within it, because like The Babadook from last year, this is a film that has a lot of its horror rooted in mental health, a lot of its horror rooted in sort of emotional troubles. And while this film has a lot more jump scares, because I don't want to spoil the nature of the threat, but basically, if you don't know what the inherent premise around Lights Out is, the fact that this Diana is a spirit that can only come alive or be seen when there is a light source.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, it's when there's not a light source.
Oh, when there's not a light source.
It doesn't appear in the light because it can't.
Yeah, it can't. Yeah, and the fact that it does that, it does. There is a lot of jump scares in this film, but compared to the Babadook, but there's not sort of an overuse of them. But the fact that it has that sort of overwhelming arc about the mental health, and the fact that there is an arc going on there surrounding some deeper themes, makes it a lot more sort of above the sort of standard, usual throwaway fodder caliber of horror films. So to speak about the actual threat, the fact that you can only see it when the lights are out, it plays with that quite a lot. There is a car alarm, that light source. There's sort of a neon sign that keeps flashing on and off in a room, which is a terrific scene that's really well crafted.
Yeah, I did like that.
And it plays with its use a lot more. And I think if this was just a standard sort of ghost or spectre or beast or demon film, then it would have been a lot less for it. But the fact that it has this inherent thing, it goes, right, this is a creature that you can only see when the lights are out. How are you going to deal with that, and how would you deal with that in there? And I think the fact that they've got this as a fixed camera film, like usual camera setup, rather than doing it as a found footage film, where if you told someone about this kind of film, you'd immediately think it was going to be a found footage film, wouldn't you? But they like some paranormal activity and stuff like that. And the fact that they've gone against that and they've allowed scenes to build with dread in that has allowed this to make this a much more immensely powerful horror than I had. And to be honest, it really did give me sort of the heebie-jeebies about the dark when I got back during the night. It brought back that fear of the dark for me.
I wanted it to. I wanted to go home and be terrified of being in pitch black, but it didn't. I think the concept is good. Like I think it's a really good idea. I think what it explores early on, the way it manifests itself, looks like it's going to go on to something really good, and then it just goes into jump scares. And at that point, I'm like, right. It's based on a short film. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So 3 years ago, the short film, and I haven't seen it, but I imagine it's the purely conceptual kind of, as most of these short films that turn to films are, they're kind of more about the concept, less about the sort of story. This one looks like a kind of film that had that concept, which is a good one. There needed to be a story to sort of pad it out a bit more. And that's what it is. It's a short film stretched out, given a plot which it gets ultimately bogged down in, because it's unnecessary. It didn't really give any dramatic to me. I mean, I get what you're saying, but I didn't find it interesting. I didn't really find the characters that compelling. I thought it was very cliched. I thought it could have been something interesting like the Babadook, but it wasn't. It was Hollywood. And I think the thing that I found with horror, and it's becoming a recurring theme, I'm not enjoying horror films, is because to me, it's as a genre, they're so transparent. It's a studio film that doesn't have much creative difference to anything I've seen before. It's better than the things like The Boy and The Forest that we've seen this year, which are utterly like nothing good about them at all. And because there's the concept here I do like, but it's simply not scary enough because the jump scares and because it's just cues. It's just musical cues and silence. It's not scary. It's not scary.
I don't agree. I can't agree at all, to be honest, because I feel like
well, good.
It did subvert cliches quite a lot for me when I was paying attention, and it does have jump scares. You're right.
I wasn't paying attention.
That, but I'm saying just the fact that it tries to be a bit different and tries to play with that premise, and with the fact that it is quite a short film, it's only an hour 20 something.
Yeah.
The fact that it is such
without credits, it's 1 hour 15.
Yeah. For me at least, it's a really tightly done horror because it has got some unnecessary backstory. I'll give you that, and it has got a lot of detail that I could have probably cut out. I
think it's way too
a lot more
down.
Vague. I think the fact that it does try to play in that sandbox with a bit deeper themes instead of being like, right, here's the monster, boo. It tries to be a bit different and explain why this is happening, and sort of they give you a reason to care, and they throw in some neat twists in there. There's a backlight that they get eventually, sort of a UV light, and they realise that can help them see the monster as the film goes on, not hurting it, but it lets you see it, so that gives a lot of edge to that. And the fact that this monster could be anywhere, anytime, but you just don't know where it's going to come from, that gives it an instant edge for me, because you have got this omnipresent threat that's constantly coming at you, and you never quite notice when it's going to attack. And there are jump scares, as you say, you're exactly right with that, and sometimes the were egregious, but I think for what it's worth, it did try to play in that sandbox a little bit more, and I think with a bit of refining and a couple more films, I think David F. Sandberg could be a really competent horror director, at least for me.
I didn't dislike it. I thought it was just fine.
I mean, if I had to compare,
I thought it was very middle of the road. Not as good as people are sort of hyping it up to be.
If I had to compare it to things like The Conjuring and other horror films from this year, I think The Conjuring's a lot better, well crafted. I think the characterization's leagues ahead of this, but I think for what it's worth, considering it was a short film, and we've seen some truly terrible short films adapted into long form, I think it's done its job well. I was sufficiently entertained. The soundtrack was sufficiently intense, and the ride itself was just. It got me, it just got me.
I think modern horror and me just are never going to get along. I think I just much prefer the older ones, the ones that are like sort of classic scares that before the times when it was just sort of lazy.
Maybe I'm just glad it wasn't an affront to horror like The Boy and The Forest were, which is...
That's what I've been saying all along. Lowered expectations because of the trash we've had to watch. I'm looking forward to Blair Witch because it looks like it might be one of these horrors that might actually be scary.
That trailer's just... No, I can't...
Because it looks genuinely creepy and horrifying, whereas these ones just sort of aren't. They're just not. I'm not desensitized. I've not really seen enough of them be desensitized, but I just think I can see right through them. I can see the filmmaker with the directing. I can see it happening on the set. I can look straight through it. I don't get them. Don't care. That's Lights Out. Ryan recommends it.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. I think it's decent horror fare.
That's kind of what it is. Fair. I'm not interested really.